on JK'z Rewatchable Hour.
Yeah, I can get George on the call right now. Just give me 1 second.
All right.
So your name is Glory, so that way I can call you by that?
Yeah, you can call me Glory. My name is Glory.
Okay. Sometimes we have a little problem with Skype every now and again, so. Oh, there's George.
Okay.
Hey, George.
Hey.
Hey, George, this is Miss Glory. She just does the audio part. She doesn't do the whole video, but we are recording.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Yep, no, and this is her show. So, Miss Glory, you can go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Welcome to the Mind Old podcast, where we explore the intersection of relationships and mental health. All right, so I'm your guest. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous right now. So I'm just gonna start again. Okay. I just want to say, like, this is my first interview. Yeah, and I am so nervous. Okay, and I just want to say thank you to Josh and Jeff. So I'll just go over it again, yeah? Okay.
Yep.
Where we explore the intersection of relationships and mental health. I'm your host, Glory, and I'm honored to be joined by some incredible guests. First we have Jeffrey Welch, a mental health advocate and podcaster from New York, and alongside him is his co-host, George Muzzy. Is it Muzzy or Muzzy?
Muzzy.
Muzzy. All right.
Yep.
Right. So George is someone who has generously agreed to share a deeply personal story about his own mental health journey, and it has impacted his relationships. So welcome to the both of you. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you for appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Now let's jump right in. Jeff, I would love for you to kick things off. Can you tell us about,
Yep.
please tell us a bit about your podcast and how you got started in mental health advocacy.
Absolutely. First I just want to say thank you for having George and I on. This is the place to be tonight. We've been talking about it all week. Our podcast, George and I, and we have some other friends, it's JK'z Rewatchable Hour. We cover every possible topic known to man. One of the biggest things is mental health. George and I and our friends were all from the same small town. And we had this idea a little over a year ago, and slowly but surely it's coming together. And one of the things that we do on our show is right off the bat, we just show absolute respect. That's why I was constantly asking you the question, so I didn't want to disrespect your show. And we never judge anybody for anything, because we all have we all have a dark time in our life, and we do a weekly show, and we do either made up games, or we talk about mental health, and we did a suicide one and a grief, and we did some recipes, and then we all each take turns hosting, and we're just looking to change the world is what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. All right. That's really good. Okay, right on.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff.
Just
All right, Jeff.
Yeah, I keep on interrupting. I apologize.
No. I was interrupting you. Please write on.
So when it comes to mental health, I know George will speak for himself, but I was just always one that never felt okay to talk about things. I grew up in an era where you couldn't talk about your feelings, you couldn't cry, you couldn't be a weakling. You know, if you're playing backyard football, you know, no matter what, you couldn't be a sissy and sit out. There was just none of that going on, and I like to let people know because currently wearing a shirt that says it's okay to not be okay, and it is, and it should be. You should never be made to feel less of a person because you're having an off day, or you are shy, or you have some stuff from your past that is just uh, not helping you progress in life, and that's where George actually comes in. George and I, he's a couple years older than me, but because of a group that we have in this podcast, he has become one of my closest friends, and that is the positivity of our show, is that we're changing lives. We're just telling people that it's okay to not be okay, and I think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to stand up for yourself and say, "Hey, there's something not right. I need help," and I I just think that that's important that people know that no matter what, you have a voice.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's turn to George, who has a real personal experience to share. So, George, I know you've been open about your mental health journey. Um, could you share a little bit about your story and how it has affected your relationships and what you've learned along the way?
Yeah. Well, I grew up as I was growing up, I actually had three different fathers throughout my life. I I call them my foster father, my biological father, and my stepfather. Um, my foster father, the only reason I call him that is because when I was born, I wasn't born with my last name. I had a different last name. Before I was a year old, they went through the paperwork and I had his last name, but he wasn't my real father. But and this is a long story, but I'm going to try to shorten it. Just give like the highlights. He was a pretty decent guy for the most part, except when he drank, he was abusive. And he actually was an alcoholic, so he was drunk a lot. But so I went through physical abuse up until I was about 8, when him and my mother separated and eventually got a divorce. Around the time I was 10, my biological father came into the picture. He came back into my mother's life. He was around for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I don't think he wasn't quite there 2 years. I think he was probably a year and a half, maybe a little less. But I didn't see him all the time. Like, he didn't move in. It's kind of like we had visitation rates of my father. He'd come every couple weeks, stay for 3, 4, 5 days, and then be gone again for a couple weeks. The biggest thing I remember was none of my friends were any good. He always downgraded them. And I mean, we're about 10 years old. So how bad can we really be? So a lot of verbal stuff with him. And just after my brother was born, who's my only true sibling, same mother, same father, was born, he was gone again. Then the place we were living at was a large house, and upstairs we had like 2 apartments that we rented out. A couple had moved into the larger apartment with 3 kids. And right around the time my father was gone, this other guy started hanging out at our house and then eventually moved in. And I didn't know what was going on, but apparently my mom was seeing him, and started out great. And then a little while in, there was a little bit of physical abuse, not a lot at first. And then eventually he started touching me inappropriately, and that went on. That and the physical abuse went on for years, until I was about 16 or so, when this whole time we moved out of town and moved into a farmhouse, and he made me go to work on farms that he worked on and help out. And I kind of built up to where I wasn't a skinny little kid anymore. As I hit puberty and whatnot, I started getting muscle. And right around the time I was 16, it kind of came to a head where we got into an argument, and we said things back and forth, and he rushed me and actually hit me on the head. And then we got into a big fight. I knocked him down a couple times, and then my mother got the fight broke up. Then we started fighting again out near the laundry room, and I ended up throwing him into the washing machine. And from that day, I went and I got all my stuff and I moved out. And so that's what I went through for the first 16 or so years of my life. And it affected relationships at first. And commitment was a hard thing for me. Anytime I would date someone or anything, and they would even suggest that, permanent or the future or whatnot, I tried to find a way to get out of it. I had a lot of things going through my head, and I just didn't want. I didn't trust people. I literally at some points thought the world was against me. Because how could so much happen to one person? And I learned how to hide my feelings. So for the longest time, I didn't show any emotion hardly. I guess that was my defense mechanism. Was I buried everything just so they would pop up later on in life. But every time they popped up, I would just bury them again. And that's probably not healthy, but that's what I did to cope. And then I joined the Army, served my 4 years, came home, and started a new life with my wife, and we had kids, and I moved on, and then I started a new life when I was in my 20s. So that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Judge. And I must say it was really powerful. It takes a lot of courage for anyone to come out and share the story. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story on my show. Welcome. And for all listeners, like people who are probably going through the same thing or feel alone, for them to hear, to listen, and know that they're not alone. You mentioned that you buried your emotions just to cope with what you were going through.
Yes.
So, I would like to ask, I listened to your story, yeah, on JK'z Rewatchable, yeah.
Okay.
And you talked about not crying, yeah, trying not to cry and that, everything. So I want to ask.
Yeah. At one point, because at one point my stepfather, I was actually crying for whether he was. I'm pretty sure at the time he was hitting me or whatnot. And I was crying, and he had said to me, which struck me weird because he said to me, he goes, every time for the rest of your life that you cry, you're going to think of me forever. And I think at that point was when, somewhere in that time is when I decided, where I taught myself how to turn my emotions off. And I've been sad since then many times, but never let it show that much. Literally the next time I actually cried was a little over 7 years ago, when actually, because my grandfather passed away, and I didn't cry at his, and he's the man that I respect more than anybody else on this that's ever walked on the planet. And I didn't cry when he passed, but I cried when we had to put our dog down. That was the first time I'd really cried, and it was only for a minute or so. It wasn't even that long. It was just kind of real quick. But now, since actually that episode has aired on our web page, I've actually opened up a little more and been able to show a little bit more than I had. I'm learning kind of how to let my emotions come out more.
Yeah.
Because before, really the only emotions was happy, mad. I mean, you could tell when I was sad, but you couldn't really tell. You're like, well, is he, or is it, but anger and being happy were the only real emotions that I showed most of the time. So yeah, it wasn't easy, but that's what I decided to do, was just hide, bury my feelings and keep them to myself.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. I would like to know, did you have you seeked professional help, like, no, at least for once? Because like I'm just asking because people who are going to listen to this might people that are going through the same thing and are listening to this right now might want to adopt your method. Okay, so like what would you advise someone going through this similar stuff to do?
Yeah, I've never received any professional advice or anything about this. Like I said, I mean, once I was done with the Army and I started my new family, I kind of, it was buried, but it didn't come out as often. It did once in a while, but not as often. And I basically just started recently, probably within the last year, letting my emotions come out. But my advice for anybody going through any of these things is, because now that I've learned, there has to be somebody out there. There's somebody out there that will talk to you if you don't want to seek professional help. There's got to be a friend, or maybe someone in your family, or someone. And if you can't, you can even reach out. We said it on our show. You can reach out to one of us through Facebook, through whatever. You can reach out to one of us, and we'll listen, and we don't judge. We'll give you the advice we can, and try to help. I mean, at the time, like I said, I didn't think anybody would help me, because as you heard on the show, like a CPS worker had one time come in and basically told me that if they found anything was going on, she would have to file a report and it would have to be investigated, and I'd still live in the same house with this person. So I thought even they were weren't going to be able to help me. So, but there is somebody who will listen and give you advice and help you. So definitely seek somebody that you trust to at least tell your story to, and maybe, and maybe with them you can get help.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the insights.
Yeah.
I really appreciate. All right. Well, I I think it's so important to bring this personal stories into conversation because it shows how universal these struggles are. All right. So now we are okay. Now, Jeff, I would love to ask you, from a mental health advocacy standpoint, um, what advice would you give to individuals who are struggling with mental health in their relationships?
Well,
Sorry,
first, I,
they
uh,
are they?
I just, yeah, I
Can
just
I
want
ask?
to say, go ahead.
Okay, how can they better support each other? Whether you know whether they're the ones experiencing the challenges, or someone who's close to them, experiencing the same thing. How can they support?
Um, well, just as I was saying, George, I absolutely applaud you for once again sharing your story. I know it's never easy. So I think I told you before, brother. It takes a ton of courage and strength to do what you did. Um, and I know because of your story, many people have been able to help themselves. But to answer your question, Glory, it's like George said. One of the things that we talk about is if nobody's listening to you in your circle, you got to get out of your circle, and that's really really tough. It's scary, and nobody really wants to do it. Um, but I can just tell you that from somebody who used to walk with their head down and was always afraid to stand up for themselves, and when I did, I was always made to feel like it was my fault. It just wasn't, and I think there has to come a time when you have to say enough is enough, and you take accountability for some stuff. Um, and like I did, sometimes I was the problem, but two of my really really good friends just one day just was like, listen, we've been there. They didn't put me down, they didn't make fun of me, they just said, listen, we've been there. And like I had said earlier, for guys to talk, it's unheard of. And here are, I don't want to say the names, but they're big muscular guys, and here they are, they're telling me all the times that they broke down and cried and everything that they went through. And I'm like, wow, there's other people that feel like me. So the best message I can give, and it's right up there with George, is somebody will listen. It may not be your best friend, it not be your brother, your sister, or somebody. It may just be a complete, total stranger. And I just say, reach out. Somebody will listen. I did talk to a quote unquote professional a couple of times. I think part of me was I was getting the book smart, like what they were trying to tell me was wrong. And when in reality, I just wanted somebody to listen. I think that's what most people want, is just somebody to listen and not judge.
Yeah.
Um, um, just like with George, it took him over 40 years to tell his story because of this 4 or 5 people around him, who made him feel safe. And nobody ever laughed. I think some of us actually cried, but it brought us closer, because I think without George saying it right then and there, we were all on the same level. We all had something similar, although not the same, something similar where, I think it just, and that's what makes our podcast, our group of friends, that strong and that important. And I just, to anybody, just speak out. Speak out to anybody, just a total stranger. You just never know. You just never, ever know.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your insights. So I want to ask George. George, you're there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I want to ask, what role do you think family and community play in supporting someone with mental health issues?
Um, hmm. Basically, a lot of times I know most people just want somebody to talk to. And sometimes when you seek help, that's all you want. You just want somebody to listen. Sometimes you might actually want the help. But definitely if it's serious enough and you can't get out on your own, I think that you definitely need to seek professional help, whether it's a psychiatrist or maybe if it's bad enough, I mean, you get like police or something involved, depending on the level of what's happening to you. The biggest thing I think with mental health is a lot of people just want somebody to talk and maybe talk about their story, talk about your story, and just talk back and forth and let them know that they're not alone. Because some mental health isn't obviously as I don't want to say as drastic as mine, but is comes out of just grief. I mean, like you've had a lot of maybe deaths in your family or something, and you're dealing with that. So in that case, obviously, maybe they don't want professional help. They just want to talk to somebody about it. So my advice to everybody, whether you need help or not, is if a friend comes to you with a mental health issue, just listen to them and try to give them your best advice. And maybe help them through that bad time in their life.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. So I'll just go ahead to ask Jeff. I think okay. I'd like to ask Jeff. Jeff, what are the most common misconceptions about mental health that you have encountered or that you encounter?
Oh God, yeah. Just real quick. At about the 35-minute mark, can we stop recording and then start recording again because the file will be too big to upload to it's normally on our show we just about the 35-minute mark we stop recording and then we do it again, so that way the file will just be too big to upload if that's okay.
I grab.
Perfect. Some of the things that people encounter.
Yeah. I'm trying to stop my record right now.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I can because it's on your end. So typically when we upload the file to Spotify and Pandora, if the file. Okay, we're back recording.
All right. Okay. Yeah, it has.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Just as I was saying, some of the things that people encounter that I've encountered was the feeling of being laughed at. Because nobody wants to be laughed at. I'm not saying that we don't laugh at each other, but if somebody was to open up, I think it's the humiliation or the, like George said, just somebody who wants to listen. Maybe that's all they want, is somebody to listen. I think it's the immediate rejection that really is not good for anybody. Because maybe it took this person 6 months to get up the courage to actually talk to somebody, and if they got shot down, that just probably set them back like a good 5 years. Other stuff that I've encountered would be, stop being a little girl, or, man up, or
Yeah.
something, and that's not right. I mean, I had it growing up, and because I was naive and I wasn't educated, I did the same thing to people.
Mm.
You live and you learn. But yeah, just the encounters is the immediate, just no, I don't want to hear about it, or get over it, or whatever. Um, I think that's the most common things that people run into.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry to cut you short. I was gonna say that I think almost everyone that struggled or that struggles with mental health, their mental health well-being, as at least at least encountered the second point you made, about manning up, just be happy, just come out of it. And yeah, let me leave you to to keep talking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. I just want to add one more thing. So, me and George and six of our other friends, we have this group on Facebook, and we talk every day. And the moment that someone or something seems off, we're either messaging people in the group, or we're texting that individual, and we call that our support group. Um,
Mm.
and whoever listens to this broadcast, wherever it is, just know that there is somebody. On our YouTube page, it says, because strangers decided to get together one day or something like that to make a difference. And that's what we were. We knew of each other, but we weren't as close as we are now. And that's just because we all believed in everyone. And I just highly recommend just getting a strong, legit uh, support group, not the ones who always say yes to you. You need the no friends, uh, the ones that will be like, hey, listen, what you're doing is not right. Instead of always letting you make the same mistakes, and you need to be around people who will, like George said, just listen. There's times we do a show and nobody interrupts anybody. It's just one person talking to get it off their chest, and that helps people. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll go on to ask George. I think I'll allow this be the last question. Yeah. How do you prioritize your own mental health and self-care?
Um, hmm. Well, mental health to me is something that even if someone seems fine, they have that thing that that's bothering them in their head. I had mental health most of my life, where things were bothering me, but self-care to me is just when you actually do something to help yourself, to whether like I said, whether it's talking to somebody, or just something you do in your life to change what you've been doing, um because of how you feel all the time. um that's what self-care is to me, is that you're changing you're changing and trying to make yourself feel better inside and feel better about yourself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. On to Jeff. Jeff, this is your last question. So I'll go ahead to ask. Um, in many cultures, seeking therapy or talking about mental health is still stigmatized. So, how do you think we can begin to break the stigma?
To break the stigma is to, one, accept it. Um, I think everybody. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you live, what you drive, what the. I don't care the circle of friends or whatever. I think somebody has some form of mental health. I think it needs to be accepted and to not be looked at as an outcast. Um, and I think that, I mean, it's 2025. You know, guys, and I'm not trying to just stick with the whole male stigmata, but just everybody should be okay to talk. It's just simple as that. Instead of like, I don't know, instead of just using it as a hashtag or tr-
Yeah.
try to sound cool in front of anybody, literally mean it. Like, people need help, whether it be professional or just somebody like on the subway or the train or wherever, or just, maybe if you're carpooling, just talk. It took me like 30 years to get out of my shell, and I'm thankful that I had the support around me, because that's what helped me, and that is what people just need to understand that. If, I don't really want to swear too much on the show, but the shit isn't funny, and it's not to it should not be made that way, and a person should not feel anything less than who they are just because they might be depressed. Maybe they were just like yelled at their whole entire life, and they don't know any better when somebody gives them a compliment. Or maybe they have low self-esteem, and they've been made fun of their whole entire life. People got to understand that mental health just isn't, George said it earlier, they could look fine, but deep down they're not. Mental health is just not all crying and stuff. It could just be silence and distancing and all that. And people just got to understand that it's okay to not be okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. So, um, before we wrap up, is there any advice that you'd like to give our listeners, people struggling with their mental well-being? Jeff, George, on to you guys.
Um,
Go ahead, George.
the best thing I can say is if something is bothering you, find someone to talk to. Maybe you don't, like I said before, maybe you don't need help, physical help. Maybe you just need to open up and talk to somebody. And if somebody comes to you, the other advice I would give is if somebody comes to you and they have a problem, just listen. Um, Ask them if they need, see if they need you to help in any way. Maybe they just want to talk to you. So talk to them and try, understand their point of view. I mean that's really the hardest thing, like I said, is just finding somebody that you can open up to, that when you have a problem, you can talk about it. Because mental health can control your life, and for a very long time it did control my life. And you know so yeah, if somebody comes to you and wants to talk, just listen, just be a good listener and help them out however they need to be, even if it's just talking, even if maybe they do need somebody to help them out of a situation. Just help any way you can if somebody comes to you.
Jeff?
Yeah. I don't think I could say it any better than George. And what I was just thinking was, earlier I had said people could be really shy, which people are, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at my screen, and there's no video, so nobody can see each other. So if you're listening to this wherever, it's going to get uploaded, um, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, Facebook, you could get on a show like this where there's no video, and you can talk. And these people, George and Glory, they will listen. I will listen. JK'z Rewatchable Hour will listen. There's 7 to 9 of us involved in our podcast. As I was just saying what I was saying, I wonder, like, if I had this 30 some years ago, where I wouldn't be able to have to see somebody, because I think all the time I was concentrating a lot on their body language, and if I didn't like it, I shut right down. And I think that this audio podcast is going to be very powerful, and anybody can talk without having to see somebody, and that might make things a lot easier on a person. And I want to say thank you for having George and I from JK'z Rewatchable Hour on your show. I greatly appreciate it. This is a powerful message, and mental health is 24/7, and it should be talked about every day, and it should be okay to be talked about, and you should not be looked down upon or made fun of because you may have an issue that is easily helped by talking to somebody.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for your input. Also, George, thank you guys for being on my show.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for being on this episode. So, yeah, thank you so much, Jeff and George, for sharing your time, your stories, and your invaluable wisdom with us today. Um, I'm sure our listeners have a lot to take away from this conversation. And for those of you listening, I encourage you to check out their podcast. Okay, the links will be in the description of this episode. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Jeff, you mentioned a support group on Facebook. Yeah, is it like
Yes.
general support group, or is just a private support group?
Yeah, no, it's just me and George and 4 or 5 of our other friends that we just talk on Messenger every day. It's just our way of letting each other know that, hey, somebody's there, and if needed, one of us is our message is one of us is always listening, is always around.
All right, so that's it for today. Yeah? You enjoyed today's conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how mental health and relationships intersect in your own lives. Thank you for tuning in to Mindful Podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode where we have more honest, real talk about love and mental health. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of your mind, and remember that love and mental health go hand in hand. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye. Nice meeting you.
George,
Nice meeting you.
thank you so much. I really do appreciate. I am so grateful.
We'll have to do a part 2 or something.
No problem. It's fine. Just let me know when you're free.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, Josh. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And now.